everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of Maximum Octane. I am super excited, as always, about my guests because, heck, I get to pick them. And today we are going to be with Mr. Jason Meyer and discussing his business with him. He is from Tillsonburg. I knew I was going to ruin it. Tillsonburg, Ontario. So for all of you fans of Canada and all things Canadian, Jason is your guy. We had an evening one night out, and I had a few too many cocktails, and I was saying, "You're from Canada or something, or you have an accent from Canada," or so I always kind of think about that. So anyway, Jason, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
So you are involved with and have ownership in some of them, and we'll get into the details with Tirecraft, which is a pretty big operation in your area and where you are. And one of the things that has always drawn me to you and listening to you is your can-do attitude. You seem to look at things that people run from and say, let me run towards this and let me embrace this, and how can I make this happen? And it just always inspires me whenever I hear your accomplishments or things going on in your life, little roadblocks and other things. You seem to plow through it. So I want everybody to understand that you actually have cut your teeth on from the very basics up. This isn't something that was handed to you or anything. So you want to share a little bit about your background, because you started in a two-bay shop, right? And now are running or overseeing 30 of them and have some ownership. So you want to tell us a little bit about how that all started?
Yeah, I went to college for accounting and finance, and started trying to become a CPA, and I was bored silly, and a year and a half later I said to my dad, they wanted to transfer me 8 hours away, and I said, I hate what I do. And I said, I want to get back into more of the automotive, the tires, that repair business. And there was a two-bay gas station for lease in my local town where I was born and raised. And to his dismay, I went and leased that. And we started selling tires. And it's been a passion through high school and part-time job in college, and kind of developed some relationships. And anyways, we started selling enough tires that the wholesaler that I was dealing with came to see me and said, we'd like to put a retail location in Tillsonburg. We would rather partner with you than compete against you. Are you interested? And at the time, I'd already been looking at a piece of property down the road. My dad had been in real estate. And so, yeah, we built a 7,200 square foot 10-bay facility, and I thought it was crazy, way too big, and quickly we filled it up. And then I've been partnered with him with Tirecraft now for 22 years. In the last 10 years, moved into a regional manager role for a couple years, and then became the senior director of corporate partner stores, so oversee operations for all locations in Ontario. And yeah, it's over 30 locations, which extends, drive the farthest one end to the other is a 10-hour drive. So.
Wow. I mean, what a story. So I want to circle back for a moment. You mentioned about to your dad's dismay. So there's a lot of conversations going on about having the quote unquote blue collar jobs coming back, and that guidance counselors and people in school need to be promoting them, and that there's money to be made and great careers and lifestyles to have working in that, and not being a CPA or a lawyer or doctor. And, there's an unfair push to push kids towards those kind of white collar businesses, right? And so your dad expected for you to go to school to be a CPA, and you're like, hey, I want to deal with tires, right? So that had to be a big strain for you because when you're young, it's hard to go against your parents and what they've had sort of mapped out for you and expectations. How did that help shape who you are today?
Well, I grew up on a farm. My dad was he was definitely blue collar machinist, and did that on the side to supplement the farm as he grew that. The real estate was kind of a secondary career again for him when he found this property for us. But all parents want better for their kids. So he's like, you need to go to school. And I wanted to get into the automotive right out of high school. And he says, no, you've got to go to school. And I'll never, the background I have with the finance, and that it certainly has been a major attribute. And I'm glad I had that background. But I think for people not to look at the trades is a big mistake. There's so many opportunities, and especially the last 5 years and what I look forward to or look ahead at. You can make a lot of money in the trades now. Being in business for yourself is so rewarding, and but this is not. I think there's going to be two classes of technicians down the road too, and the electronic diagnostic and being able to run a computer is going to be surpass the replacement of parts. And I just see this industry. It's scary to some, and I see all kinds of opportunity, but we've got to stay ahead of it and keep people interested in the trades.
Absolutely. And we definitely have to stay ahead of it for sure, because I think a lot of times in our industry, people spend so much time in the moment, and the whole business has always been structured around looking at each week instead of down the road, a month, a year, 5 years, and so on. Snap-on tools is a great example of equipment, buy tools, but pay for them once a week and just looking in the short distance instead of down the road. So this is something you're obviously very passionate about. And so you chose to pursue this avenue. And I think, what is that saying, that if you do something you're passionate about, you'll never work a day in your life? And so it's so important to follow your dreams and not anybody else's. So I'm so thankful for you sharing that piece of it. So your dad finds this property, says we're gonna build it. We're gonna build it. 7,200 square feet. You said, holy cow, I can't fill this up. What are you thinking? We have a 2-bay shop now. I have that. And then how quickly did you fill it up, and how did it go from there?
My dad found this property because he was in real estate and knew I could buy it for the taxes. So I went ahead and bought it. And then I designed the building with the owner of Tirecraft, and it didn't take us long. We started out with 3 employees in that big a building, and I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And and we hired a part-time. We hired 3 part-time guys about a month in, and only one worked part-time for the first week, and we just started filling up bays. And I heard something a few weeks ago. Somebody mentioned you should always staff for your busiest day, and I didn't think about it that way, but it's so true, because every time I thought, oh, I don't think we should add somebody else. As soon as you added another person, you work that much harder to keep them busy and filling up those bays. And yes, it grew pretty quickly. The first, probably definitely within the first 5 years, we were utilizing all the space, and the business continues to grow. But
amazing.
When I joined API, though, we were filling the bays, but we weren't making a lot of money. And that was
but you went to school to be a CPA, so you should have known all that, right? Just kidding.
No, you're right. And I'm like, what am I missing here? Because I was running the counter. I was hustling. If it got too busy in the back and I couldn't keep up, I'm wearing, not a headset as we know today, but a big bulky thing that you could hardly hear on, and you're changing tires at the same time, and then you're trying to remember who you just booked in or sold something to, and you're just running around like a chicken with your head cut off, and you're super busy, and you're not making any profit. And that's I went to a boot camp, and was persuaded to go to that boot camp, and it opened my eyes, and I'm like, my goodness, like, I'm smarter than this. I should have known this myself. And but here I am over 10 years later, and still wanting to learn more. And I think it's just invaluable to be around your peers and to learn from each other. And it's helped me open my eyes.
You know, a lot of people, we have a lot of people that come into the program and they have degrees in various things and marketing and, you know, some with the MBA. One of our members, I remember saying that her MBA cost, I don't know, $90,000 or whatever the heck it was at the time. And really, she didn't learn anything about actually running a business. You know, there was a lot of practical things and big picture and finance but there's nothing really that teaches you about the day-to-day operations, right? It's certainly not a course that we take in high school. And so it's always that thing, you don't know what you don't know. And so hats off to you that you decided to find out where could you learn about running specifically automotive repair shops, right? And tire shops. So 30 locations. So for some people, the thought of that is so overwhelming. And they say, I can't even keep track of the people at my one location or two locations. I can't find the right people to help me. I can't keep track of what's going on. How do you scale that? How do you go from having one 7,200 square foot shop to overseeing 30 of them?
Well, process. You definitely need to put in place the right people and the right processes. And once you find the right people that you trust and you empower them and you coach and mentor them, they can do it on their own. And then you duplicate that over and over. So when I didn't start it, when I joined Tirecraft, we were the fourth store. So we had three others, and but we started working on, all of us were separate names, and you couldn't even know that we were all really interconnected. The branding was awful, and but we evolved it over time, and it was the owner of Tirecraft was very progressive, very much growth minded. But we had to put the process, we were running behind trying to put processes together. And once that kind of slowed up a little bit, we focused on making a process and putting everybody under a brand and having common marketing and raising brand awareness in the community. But then we worked on the culture within the stores and what the experience would be like for the customers. And once we got that to a level where we thought we could duplicate, we started rolling that out and growing, but primarily by acquisition at that point in time, because so many opportunities were coming our way because we had built a brand. But onboarding them, now we have a full process. We have a team that goes in, and it's fairly seamless. There's always hiccups, absolutely, but the biggest key thing is you can go by any building, you can build a building, but it's the people inside that is everything. And that's where I think we had the most success, is really trying to develop a culture and make it a good, positive experience, a place where people want to come to work. And we've been fairly successful with attracting some of the best people in the industry, but also some great people outside of the industry that decided to take a look at us. And I'm really proud and excited about that. So we've hired some very good, strong people from some of the major manufacturers in the world that have come to us and thought, I'd like to make a change.
That's wonderful. So there's a lot of people that are going to be listening to this and saying, you can't find employees right now. It's the great resignation. Nobody wants to work. People are lazy, all kinds of excuses for not being able to attract good people. Obviously, you're finding a way to do that, to keep 30 stores running and operating and kept to your standards of what your brand is. What suggestions do you have for our listeners?
Believe in your people. It starts right at the hiring process. I think you really, really have to, it's tough in this market sometimes because you just want to grab the first person that comes through the door and you know, the requirements that you show up each day, and that's what we're looking for. But that's certainly not how you build a culture. And, it may take a little bit more time, but hire the right people. And once you start finding the right people, they'll start coming to you, and you build that reputation. And it's hard to do in your own community sometimes, but once you get there, you don't have an employee shortage. And then for us, expanding across a province, we're trying to duplicate that in each community. And it starts at the top and in each store, in the organization, on the floor. Everybody's got to be at the same, we look out for each other.
So you mentioned standards, and when you are hiring people, that you can't just hire the first person that walks in, and how we used to laugh about it being if they have a pulse and they can walk when you're busy. How do you resist that urge and justify in your head that we're so busy, we're booked out, we have all this going on. I have a warm body here, but they're not the right fit for our culture, so we have to say no. How long did it take you to get to that point where you could do that?
I was really lucky. I hired some really good people early on. I've got several of my staff that have been with me, probably 4 of them, for over 20 years.
Wow.
We had a good solid base, and then we built from that. But it wasn't without challenges. That not every day did each of them see the same vision I had. I wasn't even sure what my vision was at times either, because I was so busy running around. But treating people with respect and treating them how you'd like to be treated. And I was lucky enough, I think I had a few people in my life who really, at the time you maybe didn't notice it, but my leadership style came from experiences as well as what you learn along the way and what you're trained on. But I remember I was 16 and working at a heavy truck shop, and a guy was backing me in, and I ran into another vehicle, and all of a sudden you couldn't find that guy, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be fired. And it was a Chevy Chevette, so I'm starting to date myself, but they were still worth more than $100 back then. And he said to me, he goes, well, what happened? I told him what happened. And he said, was it an accident? And I said, yes. And he says, are you going to do it again? And I said, no. He says, well, that's why we call them accidents, and that's why we learn from them. And I didn't have to pay anything. And, I've said that to so many employees, because they've wrecked things here. Every new employee's going to wreck a rim or break a TPMS sensor, or we've had backing a car off the hoist and the door, they forgot to shut a door. Like, this stuff happens everywhere, right? It's not, but not losing your mind and firing them on the spot if they're good employees, and having a calm conversation with them builds a ton of loyalty and respect both ways.
What a great story. And to think of, you said you were 16 when that occurred?
Yes, I was sweating bullets.
So, I mean, the impact that somebody had, that person in that moment for all of these years, it's incredible. And that's the kind of leader you want to be, right? Is to have that lasting effect on people. You mentioned having a great culture. You really started actively working on the culture at your shops and engagement and all of that. What are some of the things that you started doing?
Well, we do our best to give our managers the tools, the reporting, and everything that they need, and the support. And we coach them, and we stay real close with them till they get to a certain level. And we use a ranking system that's similar to one that ATI was showing some of our COOs in a recent course. And I can't remember the name of it, but the 5 steps of leadership. But when we can get somebody up to that level, we start backing off, and we go from a weekly structured conversation to perhaps a bi-weekly. You have to let them manage. You have to give them some runway to run on, and you have to let them fail a little bit, and then be there to help them and pick them back up. But if you don't, I've seen it two ways. If you just walk away from people completely and there's no accountability, there's no value in that. But if you micromanage a person, they go find somewhere else to go. So you have to give them, you really have to let them grow and develop, and then see a career path. Because some of them, like myself, you started out with one location, and now I've got a few COOs who have elevated themselves up to over, they report to me, but they're the more hands-on level. And the other store managers now see that there's a growth path for them too. And several of the store managers, majority have come from within.
Wow, that's incredible. You mentioned before we went on air about with having 30 locations, you said it's actually easier to manage 30 locations. And I kind of had a giggle because I know when people hear that, they're going to be like, what? And I remember when I had my second child and our family attorney said, you'll never again know who ate it, broke it, bent it, wrote on it, tore it, and all these things. And I was like, why are you telling me this? And he's like, oh, it's just easier from now on. The first one's the hard one. And then once after you have, one kid, you get everything figured out. It doesn't matter how many you have. It's actually easier than just one. And holy cow, I thought at the time, as a new mom, and I thought, you are crazy, sir, but I think he was right. So how is it easier operating multiple locations now?
Well, I think when it was at 2 or 3 or 4, you're trying to still be completely hands-on everything. And you're running around, driving around to each location, and you haven't put the right people in place or built any structure. And then it gets big enough that you have no choice. You now have to take a step back and build a structure, build a team, coach and mentor them, and really start to oversee it. But it gives you time to now work on the business. And because if you don't have the right person in the seat and you've done everything you can to coach and mentor them, then it's time to have a different conversation. But eventually they need to run what they're responsible for, and they're reporting in to you, and you're having accountability conversations and coaching conversations. But as you get the right people in place, it definitely gets easier. And you can have team meetings where we have peer groups within our stores, and we'll pick 5 of them, for instance, in a region, and we have a monthly meeting, and it may be a structured monthly meeting for 2 hours, and you just coach 5 people rather than having 5 separate individual sessions once a week, because now they're elevated to that, and they're now calling each other, and there's cross pollination on ideas as well. So yes, the whole organization now grows together.
Love it. Love it. You mentioned your vision earlier, and it was difficult sometimes to convey your vision to your people. And at times you weren't even sure yourself. How did you get that worked out? And once you understood your vision, how did you start getting it to your people in a manner that they could understand?
That's a good question. I don't think there was any one light bulb that went off, but it was living in a total, even though things were going well, you were a high level of stress. And I'm certainly not going to say there's no stress now, because there definitely is, but it's generally a much more managed, controlled stress. And you get out of being just busy. I hear so many people say that I'm just so busy, I don't have time to do that. I'm so busy. And you have to set aside some time and really think about where you want to go. And it's tough because I still get wrapped up in the busyness at times. But then you sense it and you feel it and you pull yourself back out of it. But I still wouldn't say I sleep 6 hours a night consistently, but it's better than it was years ago when I didn't spread out where we were going. And I think we've done a much better job of having scheduled time for yourself, but also scheduled time that's consistent every week or bi-weekly or monthly with your key people, and your report twos is so crucial. And I mean, I learned that from ATI too. I mean, you always know that 3 o'clock on Monday, Kevin Allen's calling me, and you know that time is coming. And if we've, I don't talk to Kevin here as much as I used to. He's talking to my manager now. But if you did committed to doing something, and now it's Monday morning, boy, I'm getting that done, right? So but if that meeting doesn't really mean anything, it's kind of scheduled for Monday. But if Kevin doesn't always call me, and that if that was the case, I mean, Kevin was like clockwork, and he always did, and I got the same experience now working closer with Mike Bennett. But if it's scheduled, it's happening, and I learned how important that is, because if you don't stick to the schedule, then you're not important. If that person that's supposed to have that scheduled time set aside with you, if you cancel on them or you don't show, they start to realize they're not that important to you. Something else come up that was more important. So
honoring your commitments are very, very important, for sure. There's all kinds of books about that, and the 4 agreements, and a lot of great books about it. And a lot of people have that in their fundamentals for their businesses, because it is important for you to show up when you say you're going to.
Well, and the other thing is that show up is active listening, I guess. Just, you have to be present. Doesn't matter what's going on around you. That's a focused time and focused meeting. And it's not just about how's your day going. But that's important to know your people, but you also got to get to the meat and potatoes in that meeting.
How do you stay in contact with all? Because obviously with 30 locations, how many overall employees are there?
Overall combined would be about 350.
350. And so how are you, when do you go to visit the locations? Do you stop in the shop and the different things and say hi? How do you remain part of that on a personal level? Or are you removed from that now?
No, I still am committed to being at each location a minimum of 1 time per year physically on site. Then we use Zoom and Teams for the majority of the rest. Now, some of the sites will get to much more often. A new one that's just coming on board, we want to be there monthly. It just depends on the location and that, but definitely, you want to be there. You want to see. I still, try and know everybody's name when you're going through, and know something about them. And it's just a connection. And on everybody's safety board, my cell phone number is there, and a lot of them know how to get a hold of me and text me, and but as you've got better level of managers and people that are doing a fantastic job in the stores, you hear less and less from the guys on the floor, because it's being handled where it should be in that location. But I definitely, during COVID, when Ontario was really harsh on restrictions, you couldn't move around. I really missed not seeing people and going out to stores. So I didn't want to be an accountant, because I didn't want to sit in an office all day. So it's hard to coop me up now too.
You don't like to be fenced in, huh?
No, not at all. I think you've noticed that about me.
Yeah, a little bit. But you have that entrepreneurial spirit, and most entrepreneurs don't want to be fenced in an office or bogged down. They want to be thinking and dreaming and figuring out how to execute their visions and plans. So what's next for you?
I think I'm really focused on continuing to develop uh, the level, the teams that are below me. And I think I want to see everybody provide a good life for the family, have a good life work balance. And I want them financially to be successful. So I think it's really becoming more and more a coaching mentor role, leadership, a real focus on leadership. We've got metrics in place and daily and weekly reports to measure productivity per technician and sales per advisor and everything. But that's in place. We've done it. They understand what the goals are in that. And if something's going a little sideways, we've had some corrective conversations, and you see it come back around. But for me now, I want to see continued growth, but I really want to ensure that the staff and everybody continues to want to come to work here and really be proud to work for Tirecraft. I'm proud to be part of that organization, and I want to see us continue to attract the best people in the industry. I'm excited to see where it goes. We've actually, the owner of Tirecraft, Bruce, has put together an ESOP concept, which is, I don't know if it's only Canadian or not, but it's an employee share ownership program, and he's starting to allow, this past February was the first time, and team members were allowed to had the opportunity to start buying shares into the business, and he's willing to sell 20% of the business to the employee group and eventually roll that up to 49%. So
wow,
that's a pretty cool experience because now everybody has the opportunity to buy in, and for the first 1,000 they put in, he matched it. So, and it could be payroll deductions. So it's a pretty cool program. Eventually, it'd be nice if everybody became an owner in the company.
Talk about stickiness, right? An incentive for somebody to come and work with you versus somebody else. I mean, that's it. So for you to get to the level that you're operating at, obviously you had to make some changes, I'm sure, and probably along the way had some unproductive habits and had to get rid of them and replace them with more productive ones. What's one of those habits that you had to get rid of and replaced with something else?
Stop being the guy with all the answers. Like, even when I just had the one store that I have ownership in, you'd walk through the shop and you could never get to the back because somebody asked you this question, that. And my phone used to ring constantly, and there'd be text message and phone call and email and this problem and that. And what I really started, you just couldn't, and I answered every question rather than saying, have you went to your manager? Have you went to the lead hand? Have you, and I just would answer them, right? Boom, boom. And, it felt really important. Right? Boy, I'm really needed here. And in the meantime, it'll drive you crazy, right? If you're like that at one location, imagine when it expands out, how many questions am I to get. But as you redirect people back to where they go, where they should be going first for an answer, or what's really been probably the biggest game changer for me, it's my own phrase, but I call it strategic patience. And when the phone does ring from, most often, I'll let it go to voicemail or wait for them to text me. And I'll usually wait a good 4 hours. Because 9 times out of 10, they solve the problem themselves by then. And the other thing, and you turn around and you ask them, well, what would you do? And help build their confidence. Because as people get more and more confident, they ask a lot less questions. And they believe in themselves because they've made the right decisions. And now they know that, hey, I can do this. I know what I'm doing. And then they just tell you their wins for the week rather than having a list of problems and questions. So, don't ever bring a problem without a solution, and we'll work on the solution together.
Some sound advice there. Well, I thank you so much for your time today. I do know you are a very busy man, so I really appreciate that you took the time out of your day to join me and our listeners for this episode. So everybody stay safe, make good choices, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much, Jason.